over to Alexia and have her take it from here.
Alexia Doumbouya, thank you so much. It's so awesome to be with everyone here today. But our conversation is around marketing in the digital world. Today, we are going to highlight 5 pieces of a digital marketing experience we want to be intentional about. Your specific business, where are your customers coming from? How can we maximize these online spaces? Talked about analyzing like the data that we have and the experience that we have, and then pivoting and adjusting, and then owning your digital space. How do we make sure that we own in those capacities? So part 1 is specifically and uniquely about you. In this section, we're going to highlight a few things: understanding branding. We're going to look at marketing strategy basics, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how to prioritize strengthening your brand. So this area is really about, again, the brand, which is you. Yes, the name that you operate under, but also the person and persons that may operate your business as well. So the first question, or the first thing that we want to highlight is how you show up is as important as where you are. So just in how you represent yourself in any space matters just as much, right? So every business has its own flavor, if you will. Just like any other food or any other category that we looked at, every business kind of has its own flavor. And so when you think about the effective way to market, it embraces the uniqueness of that business. Okay, so especially if you're on social media, but if somebody showed it to you, maybe if you're not really heavily on it, you ever seen a TikTok that's like, listen, you might be thinking there's other businesses out there, but that do the same thing as you, but nobody can do it like you, right? That is something that we have to constantly remind ourselves of, because it can feel overwhelming. You could feel a lot of pressure when you see, oh my gosh, there's another coaching agency out there, or there's another home health care agency out there. It doesn't matter. If you've been gifted, if you've been given this access and blessed to have this gift and talent, then you have been given that to occupy that space intentionally. So the reason why we want to understand that, embrace that, is because it really does help you to kind of strategize better and also start to understand how other people think and feel about your brand. And so this is where the idea around like the customer experience and branding. And so there's questions that you want to ask yourself, not just when you start the business, but on a regular basis. That's why we see surveys, customer surveys come around and things like that, because you want to know, what do people think when they see your business? How is it perceived? What do they feel when they see your colors or your logo? What do people say to your customers who represent your brand? And so even in a digital presence, let's use this for an example. If you have a social media page and you have a Facebook page and you have a website, right? Are you even as intentional as making sure that all of your colors, like it all looks the same across all those different channels? Sometimes we'll say, oh, my color's purple. My business is purple and gold. But there are hex codes, right? Which is a specific number that identifies that color. It's like red dye number 9, or, those different dyes and things like that. But there are hex codes that literally are related to the colors. And so you don't just choose any purple or any gold or black or whatever your colors may be. If you have identified those, you want to be specific because branding matters. And so looking at those colors in the logo, is it the same across all channels? Consistency is key. You all know that, especially for my bakers, and those who are in the field of cooking and things like that, or building anything, you have got to stick to the recipe. Even if it's your own recipe, even if you know how many pinches and things like that, it's important to make sure that that consistency is there. So again, when you think about your brand today, also think about what it could be in the future. What sorts of tweaks and adjustments do you want to make? How is it working for you? Do you even understand your brand? So looking at the 7 Ps about product, price, promotion, place, people, process, and physical appearance, you're starting to consider um, how your brand is overall kind of reflected. And so then you can use these same exact pillars to start to create a space as to where your brand will go or where it will evolve to in the future. So think about the product, right? What problem are you solving, right? That's always the question that we're looking at. What problem are you solving, or what need are you handling? So is another way that we look at it. The price. Where's the balance? Now that takes some research. Sometimes people just kind of take a dart and throw it at the wall and see what happens, but you do want to know your price. And sometimes it can feel like, especially I'm talking to my service people, it can feel like, well, gosh, it just feels like it's so much easier when you have a product, as we talked about it first, because you can market that and it's easier to see and visibility. And yes, sometimes it can feel that way. And guess what? When it comes to price, though, that's where sometimes the struggle is too, because you have to know down to the how many cents of cents was the vinyl, was the glue that I used to put this label on the box, as it relates to all of your packaging and things like that. So this is why sometimes where that product and price piece align is going to take you having some really good knowledge about your business. So one of the things that my husband and I started doing, as we started to work more with businesses, was realizing he's very analytical. So that's his space. Numbers are really, really huge for him. And so when we started working with businesses, we started finding that a lot of businesses weren't sure at all of how much they were like really legit spending or how much they had the potential even to make, right? And so when he started working with them, when he started kind of doing some analysis of their numbers, started realizing that money was being left on the table, if you will, as far as what they could be making because of the types of products that they were using by not hiring. You know how sometimes we're like, I could just do it myself. Don't worry about it. I got it. I'm doing this, that. Actually, they were losing money by not going ahead and investing and hiring the right way, obviously, but just having that sort of insight. And so that's where, again, the strategizing piece kind of comes in. So keeping these things in mind about the pricing of it and promotion. How creative are you with getting noticed? Things have changed because of the digital world. So, of course, again, just keeping those things in mind are really big and important to your overall strategy. And it doesn't take as much time, as we think in leaning into that. To our next part that we're going to talk about is like, where are your customers? And thinking about where they are in relation to where you are. So if you all are on this, this journey, let's just say this e-commerce journey, are they on the same street with you and where your business is as it relates to how you represent and how you're visible to them? Or are they kind of somewhere else and you want that customer, but you need to get that customer from two streets over to your street, whether that is in physically or as it relates to your presence, excuse me. So we just want to think about what your websites look like if you have them, having them. Number one, two, one and two, how to choose the platforms, because guess what? Every platform doesn't have to be for you. As a matter of fact, on average, I usually say no more than about 2. And I mean, you can be on all the ones you want from a personal perspective. When you think about your business, even if you have outsourced that, probably just identify your top 2 platforms to be on. I love Instagram because of the visibility. So when I think about identifying it and how it relates, I remember talking to my own strategist, one of the contractors that I use to do a lot of work through Milestone. And we were talking about how like Facebook kind of puts you in the mind of like a newspaper. You go into Facebook and kind of want to read what's going on and what's happening in the world. And you kind of thumbing through and looking through it. And Instagram is like your art gallery. That's where you want to go. You're not really interested in reading a whole lot of words. If you want to do that, you'll go back over to Facebook. But you really want to just kind of see what's out there and you're just browsing and through a museum. Twitter is like a bullpen. I have a Twitter account. I can't. And I keep here. I know people say it, but I have done research, and my brand does not necessarily need to be on Twitter right now. That's just not, thankfully, because I was going to be there anyway, but it really didn't need to be there. LinkedIn, I know all of us are probably there. That's another thing that you can share is your LinkedIn profile, start connecting with people. We all need to be there. Like, not even just for our businesses, but for our development, our networking, our client development, things like that. TikTok and Snapchat, you may not need to be there. It really just kind of depends on what your target audience is and what you need. How many of you know about Alignable? Is anybody on Alignable here? If you're not on Alignable, that's another social media platform that's meant to help local talent, local businesses to engage and connect with one another. So it's more like a B2B type of an experience there intentionally. So that's another good one. We're going to talk some more about some social media tips, email tips, and how to capture and strategize in a couple of other ways. Alignable. Alignable is the name of another social media platform that we can kind of look into. No problem. So your website is your hub. We know that. It's a place where people can come. So the way you want to look at your website too is the internet is going to, like, it's with us forever. If Zuckerberg and all these other platform owners decide that I'm pulling the plug on Facebook and that's all you had and that's the only place where your content lives, we're in trouble, right? If you're like, I don't really want to do a website right now. I'm just going to play and live on social media. You need a hub. That's where you want to send people to. It's fine that they can connect to all of those other places that you exist. That's perfectly fine. Think about your website as like your main residence. You know how like on taxes they say, oh, where do you stay most of the time out the year? Now your vacation home can be Instagram and Facebook and Alignable and all those other places like we talked about. But when people say, what's your address? Where do you live? You're going to give them your address, right? If they ask you where you live, where does your business live? So same thing with your business. It's okay to have if you are a home-based business even, right? And you're like, well, I got a P.O. box or I use certain things like that. But guess what? You always want to make sure there's a place where people can go to find you. And that, in fact, is your website. Because look, 5.6 billion times per day, not per week or year, per day, people search Google. I mean, like literally, how many? Just off the top of your head, drop in the chat if you search Google at all today, yes or no. And if you know, how many times did you search Google? Drop it in the chat, yes or no. Right, multiple times, a lot, right? Like literally, I think when we were on break just now, I was searching on Google real quick because I was trying to find something. And so that's why it's so important to know, because when you have that web presence, that's where people are going to look. It's okay to have the Facebook pages and the other ones, but you want to be able to have a space where people can actually see you, where you live and visible. And so to that point, if you're going to invite people over your house, right, you want to make sure your house is appealing to them. And you want to make sure it's welcoming and it's easy on the eyes, and you walk in. Thank you so much, Gianna. You walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is a really nice place to be. That's the feeling that people want to get when they come to your website. So this is just an example of it. And there's so many different platforms that you can use, like Wix or Webull, to develop the WordPress, to develop these websites as a template. Shopify even has like nice little templates that you can use. But the biggest piece is making sure that it's professional, not too busy, that as soon as people come there, just like a newspaper, right? Think about a newspaper. If nobody opens the rest of this newspaper, or if they only read the front page, or if you only read when they do like the top highlights for the 6 o'clock news, are they going to get what they need? Do they know why they're here? And so if you are a person that offers like a life coaching service and someone comes to your website maybe your favorite animal are dolphins. And so all over the place, you got like these really pretty dolphins and aesthetically it's beautiful. But people are like, I'm not sure what is going on here. I'm not really clear on why I'm here. Then people will compliment the aesthetics, but they may be deterred from actually taking advantage of the services. So is your value proposition there? What are you known for? How can I get in contact you? I just did a post around the holiday season, just encouraging professionals and business owners to make sure they have their hours of operation updated, to make sure their out of office emails are updated. This is another great reason for a website because then you can actually get an email with your domain. And we're going to talk about, emails and how that engages your customers soon. But those pieces are really important. Up-to-date information. Is it user friendly or streamlined navigation? And how do we know about you? And let me tell you, I know also that sometimes we're stuck between that rock and that hard place as minority business owners. Do I put the information on about me or don't I? Because we like to try to sometimes be seen as the minority business owner, but we don't want to turn people away because sometimes people don't always relate well to the minority business owner. Well, people need to know about you because, like we said in the very beginning, you are the brand. And so I need to get to know. It doesn't have to be an entire page about it. It can be a nice little blurb with a nice little picture, but it's important for the person who owns this. Otherwise, too, people get scared off by that. Like, I don't know if this is a real thing or website or not because of all the scams and things that are around out there. So when you think about privacy and security, so your website, as it relates to the professionalism, it's just important that you have some of those things laid out. And I would encourage you, even if you just need to get something started, because you want to have a website, yes, take advantage of the templates that are there. But I'm also a firm believer in maximizing your strengths. And so if you are not a web developer, like a web designer, outsource it. There are plenty of people out there that will help you, that are economical. Sometimes we got to invest in our businesses. Outsource it. Get the right thing the first time, right? And then it takes it off of your plate too to have to navigate and manage that. Is it mobile friendly? We just talked about Google searches, right? And we just talked about it being user friendly. How many people, when you were doing Google search, were on your computer or were you on your phone? Google searching. Where were you searching Google? On your phone or on your computer? You can drop it in the chat. And if you are phone, right? If you're like me, like there's times I'll be sitting in front of my computer and will be on my phone searching Google or doing stuff. Like, why can't you just use the computer right here? We're tethered to these things, okay? We are. So you want to make sure that it's mobile friendly. And a lot of platforms like Wix, it'll allow you to pivot between both. Do you have images of people? Even if you are a tech-based company or maybe one that you don't think is heavily direct customer engaging, everyone has a customer, right? That's who's buying our products and services and things. And how is the shopping experience? Do you have feedback and testimonials on there? And for those of you who remember when we did through the Urban League, the Google My Business workshop, make sure you are reflecting your business on Google, even if it's a service. There's a way to do that and not have to log in an actual business address. Just pivoting a little bit to social media. And the reason why is because you can't put everything there. You want your customers to be able to stay engaged with you whether they're on social media or not. People take social media breaks, right? You don't want because somebody decides to fast, from social media, they're like, oh man, they're never going to know what's going on. With success in social media, a big part of it is planning. And so it's hard sometimes for small business owners because you're trying, especially if whatever product or service you're offering isn't digital. It's like you feel so tasked and heavy with having to stop and do these updates and make sure that you're connected with social media and you're responding to people. And so creating a calendar is probably the best thing that you can do. My type A personality has me create calendars and checklists for everything. Like right now in my line of sight, I have like 2 calendars and a whiteboard. And on my phone, I have calendars because I'm constantly making notes and making reminders and things like that. It just helps me to stay organized. But to the point where your social media calendar, you can like decide what your content is going to be about. So like one of the other platforms or initiatives that I have is called CocoLife.Black. CocoLife.Black, this is my elevator pitch. CocoLife.Black is an online Black maternal health retail and resource site. And it's geared towards helping moms to identify ways that they can stay connected with their resources, also be celebrated through gifts. And it's intentional to help reduce these race related disparities in Black maternal health, right? So when it's time for me to do content, that is very different from what I do for Milestone. So it is literally like using my right and my left brain. So because I am less creative, that's not really my thing as much. In order to make sure that everything isn't super statistical and super black and white, I create a calendar and I go over on a weekly basis. So like Mondays are what I call Mom Crush Mondays. Wednesdays are the Wellness Wednesdays, Thursday, Thankful, Friday, Freedom, like things like that. It seems trite and like, oh my gosh, really, this is super corny. But I have to be able to take the guesswork out of things. I have to be able to free my mind from feeling inhibited by that. So I schedule a lot of posts. There's different platforms like HubSpot that you can use to do a lot of scheduling. There's one that I use most common. I'm looking at my phone now to find it, but Appify, Apphi. It's another one that you can use to kind of schedule posts with. If you all are on Canva, Canva is another one, Canva.com. Canva is another one that you can use to schedule posts. And it's just a really great, Buffer .com, all of those ones that you can use to schedule posts so you can take the thought out of it. So you don't have to worry about it. Automation is key. And we're going to talk about that too when we get into discussing analyzing the data and information that we have. So the goal is, again, just to make sure and the goal is just to make sure that you're making it easy on yourself, because even if you are a guru with social media and technology and digital presence, that may not be where you need to be spending your time. Email is another major customer touch point, as we call them. Customer touch points are those things, of course, exactly like I said, where you engage with the customers. And so 46%, right? Consumers who believe email is the best channel for company contact. Chat is another one, but email especially. Most people prefer it over any channel. Why? Because people don't like calling and waiting on phones. I can send an email. I can send 5 emails to 5 different people and then go away and do everything else. I don't have to make 5 phone calls. Now, depending on the turnaround time and how much you need something, but in knowing that, guess what you want to make sure you have? You want to make sure you have a way for people to get in contact you through email. DMs are nice and things like that, but you really want to push people to use your email. You can track it better. It centralizes it if you're on multiple platforms, and it just gives you an overall better customer experience. And this is their preference. And so that's what you also want to consider. So some strategies to be successful with that um, is one, making sure that you have a good list. And so getting an email list is not as difficult as sometimes it seems. You can have people email you just to sign up, like on your website. You know how you can go on a website and they'll ask you to key in your email address to keep in touch with us. That's a great way to start it. Personalized messages is another good thing. Sometimes it can feel really easy and very tempting to set up like automatic responses to things. And those may be necessary, like, like we talked about your out of office messages and things like that. It might be great to have an automatic message that comes out as soon as the email is received. It's like, hi, we received your message and we'll be responding to you in 24 to 48 hours or whatever your normal turnaround time is. That now sets a really good customer experience. I know that I'm going to be hearing back from someone in this time frame. And so I'm not messaging you tomorrow if I didn't hear back. You also want to be able to use that as a means to market to your customers and send promotions to them, creating that FOMO or the fear of missing out. Right? People love to hear about what's up and coming and what's new. And you can do that in a fun and engaging way. And this is where you get a chance to be intentional still, but a little more personable, because what you're doing is like you're creating this private email community. It's like if you're in this email community, you're not just, someone on social media that kind of found me and not really sure about what this relationship is. Now you're getting a chance to really develop this relationship with your customer base. And you'll be able to use this, like this is invaluable. this your email distribution list. And these are customers and people that you know have intentionally come to your page or intentionally want to be connected with your brand. Here's some marketing tools. I mentioned HubSpot, but these are some tools that also can integrate with some of those other web development platforms I mentioned. You probably have heard of some of them, or especially MailChimp. That's like one of the most popular. And this really is just the way to kind of set up again, those engagement opportunities with your customers with email and even like newsletters. Keep them afloat on like your stories that we talked about, or, hey, I just put out this new book, or hey, go check this out. Just put this up on the website and it keeps everyone and the message consistent. And guess what? You just take that and then copy paste in a nice way and put it on your social media platforms too. So it's a way to keep intentional about your content. So thinking just about other ways that you can market your business online. Um, how many of you have your business on Google My Business or on Yelp? Places like that where people are starting to use those more often to decide. So anytime, especially if I'm traveling or if I'm using a business for the first time, on Amazon when I order things, I'm constantly checking reviews. I'm constantly checking them on Google or Yelp to see what other people are saying. So you want to encourage that. Some businesses, I know my nail salon even offers discounts if you do like a Google review or things like that, Yelp review to help them gain more visibility. Because the more you do that and the more people search for you, that builds up your visibility online as well, and your presence showing up. Digital ads and videos. If you are able to do the text option where people can subscribe to your text, email, and SMS, delivery apps like Uber Eats and DoorDash, and then, of course, the Amazon and Walmart. Target even has an option for some business owners. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but you can go on Walmart and Target and you can actually buy from third-party vendors on Walmart. So they have an e-commerce site where you can kind of like register. You go through some checks and balances, but you can have your items available on those different platforms on online places too to gain that presence. When we think about maximizing, that's where we get into the conversation around SEO, get into the conversation around automation, thinking about multi-channel marketing ideas and things like that. That's where some of the maximizing component kind of comes in. Things that we can think about is if you've already taken some interest in those areas that I just mentioned, is getting the most bang for your buck, right? And so you want to save time, you want to save money. And so if there's little tweaks that you can make from your digital presence, you make those, and then you don't have to work as hard on getting customers to come in. They'll start to flow in more fluidly and they'll stay, because that's the piece too. That's sometimes the other pivot with social media, right? We do a lot of work on getting followers, getting people, but do they stay and do they engage? You ever see places they got like 20,000, 100 and something thousand followers, and then you look at posts and they got like 2 likes or two, because the engagement isn't there. It does not matter how many people walk past your store, because that's pretty much what it is. It's not how many people walk past your business. You want people to come in and stay a while, as it relates to being a retained customer. And that consistency is where that comes in and looking at your results. And so SEO, search engine optimization, is a really, really, really big, it's not just a buzzword, it's a really big key to how successful and how much you can grow your business. So that pretty much looks at your website and how it shows up in search results, like Google, like Bing, Yahoo. I don't know if people still use Yahoo, but I'm sure someone does. But all those different, Google happens to be my preference. They did that intentionally. But all those different places where you can type in a name, that's where the search engine optimization comes in. So here, keywords are crucial. So keywords to SEO are like hashtags to social media. All right. That's kind of like how all of that is. So when you see people with all these like, why do they have all these hashtags? That's how people search on social media oftentimes. So if I'm looking for a Philly event planner, I go to social media and I hashtag Philly event planner. If I'm looking for Philly, I'm looking for a brunch spot in Philadelphia. That's sometimes what you hashtag. And so when you take these certain approaches, it's important to know those things so that, again, you make sure that your business aligns with the ways that people can find you the easiest. So going back to the creative planning when it comes to social media, you put up all of these posts and these really great captions and appealing things, but there aren't any hashtags on it. Right there, some customers are being forgotten, a big bulk of your customers. That's the same thing with SEO. And so when we all, and this comes into play when you're developing your website and you put not just the name of your website up there, but what your website does or what your business does or what you do at your business. You want to make sure those keywords are always included in titles, in headers, in the descriptions on your pages. That should always be on your website. And if you have multiple pages on your website, it should be all over. So this way, for instance, if you are if you are a car dealership, if that's what you own, right? That should be not just the name of your car dealership, Alexia Doumbouya's car dealership. You want to make sure that in every space on each page, it keeps saying car dealership, not just cars, not just we sell cars, but car dealership. Because when I go to Google and I search for car dealerships in my area or car dealerships near me, you're going to pop up. You'll see some that pop up right at the top because they may be an ad and they paid for that positioning. But the more organic your search is and your following, you'll start to pop up more. And people are like, oh, car dealership, boom, click on it. And now they're on your website or where your digital presence is. So you want to make sure that all of the data, again, aligns with what it is that you do. So Google is considered one of the most trustworthy places. So that's why people use it all the time. And that segues right into automation. I told a story all the time. I remember reading an article and they interviewed President Obama and they were talking about decision fatigue. And it was at the time he was in office that he mentioned that the reason why he only wears black and blue suits is because he's making major decisions and he does not have time to worry about what he is going to wear. And so to minimize decision fatigue, because how many of us know our brains are constantly working, but our brains are a muscle. So the more you work it, the more you use it, the more it gets depleted. That's why rest is so important because it helps us and our health is so important because it helps us to keep this vessel, this organism running as well as it can. So automation is key. Don't spend your time or your brain power where it doesn't need to be spent. That's why, we talked about there's some emails you can automate. Do that. There's some posts that you can schedule. Do that. And the same thing holds true in other elements of your business so that you can minimize the amount of time you need to spend on certain decisions. That also includes delegating. Some things may need to be delegated so that you don't have to worry about it. And your customers are okay with it. Having a way to manage or a customer relationship management screen is a really great way to keep insight into your customers. So again, you can start to automate some of these interactions and you don't have to spend as much time trying to gather information from them. Analyzing and adjusting. So mentioned early on that we were going to talk a little bit. We're not going to get super heavy into the side of kind of data, but we just want to highlight the importance of having access to it, and especially with goals. So we're all familiar with goal setting, and most of us definitely with SMART goals. If you've ever gone through the process of setting a goal, and even more importantly, revisiting your goals to see where you are with them, you know that when they've fallen into this category and they are very specific and you can go back and kind of measure your success because you've done that, it makes for a much better experience. And that's how progress actually happens. Sometimes we can't really put our finger on how we progress. We associate success and progress with, like the question I asked at the beginning, how much has your business grown? Like in number, in customers, in sales. But it's also about how your business has navigated your goals that you've set. Have you met your goals? Were they the right goals to set? And so taking the time to set these goals, and they can be over a 30-day, 60-day, 90. In general, I always encourage people to create a 30, 60, 90. Because yes, when people say, what's your 5-year plan? Yeah, you absolutely should know that. But what's happening is more in the immediacy of things. And so you plan out 5 years by chunking and looking at what you're going to do moment over time. Because when you do it that way, then when something like, COVID-19 hits, you can kind of pivot, and you already had a little bit of insight into what your business needs were and where you wanted to kind of take your business anyway. So it may, like, you may had already planned for yourself, like, man, I really need to up my digital presence game before like March 2020 hit. So that was already on your forefront. And then it hit and you were like, oh, I knew I needed to do this. I had already, signed up with a web platform. And so boom, here I go. And that's a way to kind of keep on track with those goals. You don't have to worry about trying to keep your own metrics or create a tool to gather metrics. Many of the platforms that we use do it for us. Google Analytics, like we know, and that access is available whether you have a website through Google or not. But having that Google presence makes it easier for them to collect that data. Email analytics is another one, even your regular Gmail. Like you can look in there and see, and you can get data on it. And the biggest one that maybe we don't always check is social media analytics, especially for like Facebook and Instagram. And you have those business profiles, you can go on and see exactly how your pages are performing. It tells you who's most often responding to what you post, where they're from, shows you the area, and all of that. So then you can start to create some really specific goals and how you want to target that customer base. Please, please, please do not underestimate the power of surveys. Net promoter score is especially true. And that's one of the easiest questions you can have. And if you if you haven't heard of net promoter score, pretty much like, would you tell somebody to come here? Would you refer this place to anybody else? And that's like, yes or no, I would not. That's the promoter part of it. Now you can delve deeper and ask more questions, but your testimonials, honestly, and surveys, they're a really great way for you to have insight into what people think about your business, not even just how you're doing, but what's the perception in the community out there for your business. So the last piece, the final section that we're going to touch on before we open up for question and answers is about owning that space. And really and truly, the reminder is just for us to constantly keep at the present, at the forefront of everything, that this space is ours to own. So thinking about how you're going to raise your digital marketing game. How are you going to command this new digital presence in a way that, even if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable, you know that it's going to bring about more access for your business. And even more importantly, it's going to highlight the legacy of your business.